watching All 24 News World News Program. Next up are the headlines. Trump says he's talking to Iran, but Iran fires back with new demands as missiles pound U.S. allies in the Gulf. Also coming up, the U.S. warns NATO of a bleak future while trying to build a new coalition. Meanwhile, Europe has other ideas for the Strait of Hormuz, and China is mediating. In our news as well, violent Zionist raids rock southern Lebanon, killing medics, while President Aoun pledges to push forward with restoring the state despite the challenges and obstacles. And later on, Middle East supply fears send oil prices soaring 3%. US companies warn Trump, while Europe scrambles and calls for an emergency plan. Escalation is continuing between Iran, the United States, and the Zionist entity, with new missile strikes, air raids, and growing threats on both sides, raising fears of a wider regional confrontation. Zafar Jenny has more.
Tensions continue to escalate between Iran, the United States, and the Zionist entity as both sides exchange strikes and threats amid the ongoing war. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced launching the 56th wave of Operation True Promise 4, targeting weapons production sites and aviation fuel centers in Haifa and Lod Airport in the occupied Palestinian territories. The IRGC also said the strikes targeted U.S. military facilities in the region, including a Dhafra Air Base in the UAE and the Jafar Naval Base and Sheikh Isa Air Base in Bahrain, using hypersonic and medium-range missiles as well as drones. Meanwhile, U.S. Zionist warplanes carried out airstrikes on several Iranian cities, including Tehran and Markazi province. Iranian media reported casualties after a strike on a school in the city of Khomeini, while other attacks hit residential areas in Tehran and Tabriz. Iran also said its air defenses intercepted and destroyed a Heron drone over Tehran. In Washington, however, U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed ongoing talks with Iran but questioned Tehran's readiness to reach a deal. Trump also threatened additional strikes on Kark Island, a key Iranian oil hub, while criticizing allies for what he described as a lack of support to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
We strongly encourage the other nations to get involved with us and get involved quickly and with great enthusiasm. I have that from a number of them, and I'd like to say their names, but frankly, I don't know if they would want me to or not, because maybe they don't want to be targeted. But I say, wouldn't matter if you're targeted or not, because this is a paper tiger that we're dealing with now. It wasn't a paper tiger 2 weeks ago, it's a paper tiger now.
For his part, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Iran is ready to continue the war against the United States and the Zionist entity unless guarantees are given to prevent further attacks.
We haven't sent any message and we are not requesting a ceasefire, but this war must end on the condition that it will not happen again. If we say we don't want a ceasefire, it's not because we are seeking war, but because this time it must end in a way that ensures our enemies never think of repeating these attacks and aggressions. I believe they have now learned the lesson and realized the kind of country they are dealing with. A country that doesn't hesitate to defend itself and is ready to pursue the war wherever it may lead and continue it for as long as necessary.
The latest strikes and statements highlight the growing risk of a wider regional escalation. The war that was supposed to last weeks is now open-ended, and the world is holding its breath.
In a similar development, at least 4 members of the Popular Mobilization Forces were killed in a bombing at a checkpoint in western Iraq near the Syrian border. 3 others were wounded. AFP reports the checkpoint, manned by PMF, Anbar Operations Command, and federal police, was targeted in the strike. One source attributed the attack to the United States, saying 5 people were killed. Multiple attacks hit the UAE on Monday, including a missile that killed a Palestinian man in Abu Dhabi and a drone strike that sparked a fire at a fuel depot near Dubai Airport, temporarily disrupting flights. Authorities say the fire is out and no one was injured in the depot. The UAE Ministry of Defense confirmed it intercepted several Iranian missiles and drones across the country. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia reported shooting down more than 60 drones over its eastern regions since Sunday. In Qatar, explosions were heard in Doha as the military intercepted missile attacks. The Qatari Foreign Ministry warned that diplomacy with Iran is impossible while attacks on Gulf states continue.
And therefore, the very simple truth right now is that if they stop the attacks, then we can find a way out through diplomacy. But as long as our countries are being attacked, this is not the time to establish committees. It's the time to take a very principled position in protecting our countries and for them to stop attacking us immediately.
U.S. President Donald Trump called on 7 countries to send warships to protect oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking on Air Force One, Trump said the United States is in talks with these nations to help reopen the strait, which carries a fifth of the world's oil and has been shut amid escalating Middle East tensions.
We are talking to other countries about working with us for the policing of the strait. And I think we're getting good response. If we do, that's great. And if we don't, that's great too. Remember, like as an example, in many cases, the NATO countries, we're always there for NATO. We're helping them with Ukraine. As many it's got a notion in between us. Doesn't affect us, but we've helped them.
Meanwhile, United States President Donald Trump warned NATO on Sunday that the alliance risks a grim future if it does not help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Aboard Air Force One, Trump said failing to secure this vital waterway could have serious consequences for NATO's future. For his part, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz will not be led by NATO, but by a wider coalition. At a London press conference, Starmer added that the UK is working with allies to develop a plan to secure this vital waterway.
We will protect our people in the region. Second, while taking the necessary action to defend ourselves and our allies, we will not be drawn into the wider war. And third, we will keep working towards a swift resolution that brings security and stability back to the region.
Similarly, Starmer stressed that Britain is taking steps to defend itself and its allies, but will avoid being drawn into a wider Middle East conflict.
But ultimately, we have to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to ensure stability in the market. That is not a simple task. So we're working with all of our allies, including our European partners, to bring together a viable collective plan that can restore freedom of navigation in the region as quickly as possible and ease the economic impacts.
Additionally, the German government said NATO is not involved in the Middle East conflict. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius on Monday rejected President Trump's call for military support against Iran, saying Germany will not participate in the war.
What
does the world expect? What does Donald Trump expect from, let's say, a handful or 2 handfuls of European frigates in the Strait of Hormuz that the powerful American Navy cannot accomplish there alone? That's the question I ask myself. And before we make a decision outside of NATO territory, by the way, we would need both an international framework and a mandate from the German parliament. I would think about that very carefully before we take that step. And I see absolutely no reason to do so. It's not our war. We didn't start it. We want diplomatic solutions and a swift end.
The EU's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas said EU ministers showed little support for expanding the bloc's Red Sea mission to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking after Monday's meeting in Brussels, Kallas stressed that ensuring the flow of fertilizer, food and energy remains the EU's priority, while the proposal to extend Operation Aspi's mandate drew little backing.
Is now waging war on global economy. Ministers reaffirmed today that our focus is de-escalation and also to the freedom of navigation. For the time being, there was no appetite in changing the mandate of the Operation Aspides for now.
The EU's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas said on Monday she discussed with the UN the possibility of using a Black Sea-style initiative to secure oil and gas shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. Before the EU foreign ministers' meeting in Brussels, Kallas added that ministers would consider a potential mandate change for the EU's small naval mission in the Middle East.
I had talks with Antonio Guterres about whether it was possible to also have the same kind of initiative like we had the Black Sea initiative, how to get the grain from Ukraine out, because the closure of Strait of Hormuz is really dangerous for the oil supplies, energy supplies to Asia. 85% of the oil and gas through Strait of Hormuz goes to Asian countries, but it's also problematic for the fertilizers, and if there is a lack of fertilizers this year, there's going to be also food deprivation.
China's foreign ministry said on Monday that Beijing is in contact with all sides over the Strait of Hormuz, urging de-escalation in the Middle East. Spokesperson Lin Jian called on all parties to halt hostilities immediately to prevent further escalation and wider economic fallout.
阿富汗巴基斯坦是搬不走的邻居。
Recent tensions in the Strait of Hormuz and its surrounding waters have disrupted international trade routes for goods and energy, threatening peace and stability in the region and the world. China once again calls on all parties to immediately halt their military operations, avoid any further escalation of tensions, and prevent regional instability from causing more serious repercussions for global economic development.
Still with the Middle East developments, occupation forces launched a new ground invasion of southern Lebanon on Monday, supported by air and artillery strikes. At least 7 were killed, including 4 in Qantara and 2 paramedics in Kfarsir. Airstrikes on other towns killed 10 more and wounded 13. Mass displacement toward Beirut followed, bringing Lebanon's toll since March 2nd to 886 dead, including 111 children and 2,141 wounded. 38 healthcare workers have also been killed. A growing humanitarian crisis is unfolding in Lebanon as Zionist airstrikes force hundreds of thousands of civilians from their homes, leaving displaced families sheltering in makeshift tents in central Beirut, while fears mount of wider war. Escalation has more.
Lebanon is grappling with a deepening humanitarian crisis as thousands of displaced families seek refuge in public spaces across the country, including Beirut's central Martyrs Square. Since early March, intense Zionist airstrikes across Lebanon have killed at least 826 people and forced more than 830,000 residents to flee their homes. According to local authorities and aid groups, many families said they had only minutes to evacuate as bombs fell on towns and neighborhoods, leaving them with little more than what they could carry.
No one is helping us, not the government, not the United Nations, no one, absolutely no one. Everyone is watching and preparing for what might come next. Their only concern now seems to be, what will we do if Hezbollah is eliminated? That's what they are thinking about. They are thinking about the people. 15 months have passed, and here we are, with this constant tension, and they haven't been able to do anything to stop it. There have been assassinations and attacks. The Zionist entity carries out assassinations, and what have we done in response? Nothing.
In the heart of the capital, rows of makeshift tents now line parts of Martyrs Square, where newly displaced families struggle to find shelter, food and medical care. Among them is a father of 6 who described the sudden flight from his home and the fear that continues to haunt his children.
The United Nations is useless. As I told you, the head of the United Nations earns $100,000 just to issue condemnations, but he can't actually do anything, because as I keep saying, what will happen?
For many Lebanese, the latest offensive has compounded years of hardship. The country is still reeling from the devastating 2020 Beirut port explosion and an ongoing financial crisis that has pushed much of the population into poverty.
The United Nations is very active in Lebanon, working alongside the Lebanese state, the President of the Republic, may God grant him a long life, and the Prime Minister to end the war and the pressure. The United Nations has significant influence in Lebanon and abroad, especially in the United States and elsewhere. God willing, we stand in solidarity with the state, and we will support all of its decisions.
Crisis has forced people to rebuild from scratch, often with limited support. Now as fears grow of a wider conflict and a possible Zionist ground operation, aid organizations warn that Lebanon faces mounting pressure on both humanitarian and security fronts. Yet despite exhaustion and uncertainty, many displaced families say they are determined to endure yet another chapter of instability.
Still with Lebanon's related news, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun reaffirmed his commitment to restoring the state despite the obstacles. Meeting a delegation from the National Salvation Platform at Babda Palace, he expressed hope for progress in his initiative to end the aggression against Lebanon.
The state is the one that protects everyone, and we will continue with the choice of restoring the state, regardless of the obstacles we face. No one expected the wars of others to return to our land, and we hope to achieve breakthrough in the initiative we launched to stop the daily losses that all Lebanese are paying the price for.
Moving on to Gaza, at least 5 Palestinians were killed and others wounded amid continued Zionist occupation ceasefire violations in the Strip. 2 died from Zionist fire near Khan Yunis and northern Gaza Strip, while 3 were killed and several injured when a dilapidated building collapsed at a displacement camp in Khan Yunis. Turning to other news, oil prices jumped about 3% Monday as the Middle East tensions threatened key export facilities. Brent crude rose to $106.50 a barrel and U.S. crude to $102.44. RBC Capital Markets forecast prices could exceed $128 within 3 to 4 weeks. Major U.S. oil companies warned that the Trump administration that ongoing Strait of Hormuz disruptions could trigger sharp, prolonged price swings and destabilize global energy markets. CEOs told the White House that rising Middle East tensions threaten global energy security and broader economic stability, calling for urgent strategic action. For its part, the White House is warning Americans to brace for higher gas prices. Energy Secretary Chris Wright says the spike is tied to escalating tensions in the Middle East. He blames Iran and insists the spike is temporary, predicting a more stable market ahead. But drivers are already feeling the pinch. Gas is up to 24% since the war began, the highest since May, with further increases expected.
Yeah, I think that this conflict will certainly come to the end in the next few weeks. Could be sooner than that, but the conflict will come to the end in the next few weeks, and we'll see a rebound in supplies and a pushing down of prices after that. But yes, we were very aware that we would have short-term disruption. We would cause a little bit of increased prices on Americans. Prices today are still far below what they were in the Biden administration.
EU energy ministers met Monday to explore ways to ease rising energy costs amid the Middle East war. The European Commission is preparing measures to shield consumers, including subsidies for industries, tax cuts, and adjustments to the EU carbon market to ensure permanent supply. Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf spoke with his French counterpart Jean-Noël Barrot on Sunday, reviewing bilateral relations and future cooperation. The ministers also discussed the Sahel situation and developments in the Western Sahara settlement process. The first round of French municipal elections saw a strong showing for Jean-Luc Mélenchon's left-wing France Insoumise party in a key test ahead of next year's presidential vote. Political groups are urging widespread mobilization to block a far-right win in the second round next Sunday. Samantha Sib reports now.
The first round of France municipal elections produced notable political surprises, with new forces emerging and others losing ground in a vote seen as especially significant ahead of next year's presidential election. In northern France, the left-wing party France Unbowed made a major breakthrough. MP David Guiraud topped the vote in Roubaix with about 45%, while the party also showed strong results in major cities such as Lille and Saint-Denis, strengthening its position within the broader left.
C'est pourquoi. For this reason, we are extending our hand to the other lists participating in this vote in order to form an anti-fascist front in the second round of the municipal elections. Wherever the right and the far right pose a threat, let us merge the lists capable of qualifying for the second round.
Meanwhile, the far-right National Rally achieved strong results in several southern cities. Marseille stood out as a major surprise, where its candidate Franck Alizio won about 35%, a significant improvement over the 2020 municipal elections.
Wherever the local context allows, the National Rally extends its hand to lists of the genuine right, to independent lists, and to all those who reject both the chaos of the far left and the dilution of the identity under Macronism.
In Paris, the traditional left maintained its lead, with Emmanuel Grégoire ahead and former Minister Rachida Dati suffering a clear defeat.
Dimanche prochain, la droite et l'extrême droite.
Next Sunday, the right and the far right could win in Paris. I say this because of the gravity of this unprecedented moment for our city. I call on all voters of the Republican and progressive camps, regardless of their choices this Sunday, to support the list we represent.
À partir de maintenant.
From now on, a decisive week begins. Our votes can help the right win. We can be numerous enough to block the left.
Despite the competitive race, voter turnout remained the main concern, with participation between 56% and 58.5%, highlighting the persistent gap between voters and political parties. With the second round scheduled for the next Sunday, political forces face complex alliance negotiations, particularly as the Socialist Party refuses coordination with France Unbowed in several areas.
Je ne ferai aucune négociation de couloir.
I will not engage in any secret negotiations. I will not play any games. I want to be clear. I'm clear about who I am. The fight against the National Rally has been the fight of my entire life.
De toute ma vie.
These results suggest that the path to the next presidential election may evolve into a three-way contest, the far right seeking to expand its base and break political isolation, a divided left struggling over leadership and strategy, and the governing centrist camp working to reorganize and regain momentum.
And before we wrap up, let's catch up on more international news stories in the News in Brief.
Algerian Ministry of National Defense announced on Monday that 4 armed smugglers were killed in the area of Farak in Tamarast, southern Algeria. According to a ministry statement, joint units of the Algerian army carried out an ambush on Sunday night that led to the neutralization of smugglers. Forces also recovered an AK-47 Kalashnikov, 5 ammunition magazines, and 1.6 million psychotropic pills.
Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy returned to court Monday for a trial over allegations he sought campaign funds from former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi for his 2007 election. The case is one of several legal battles that have followed Sarkozy since leaving office.
Three people were killed on Monday in Ukraine following Russian strikes targeting the regions of Zaporizhia Oblast in the south and Dnipropetrovsk Oblast in the east of the country. The head of the regional military administration in Dnipropetrovsk, Alexander Hancha, said on Telegram that 2 people were killed and 7 others injured in a Russian strike on the region. In the neighboring southern region of Zaporizhia, a woman was killed and 3 others were wounded, according to the head of local military administration, Ivan Vidorov.
The Asian Football Confederation said it has received no notice that Iran will withdraw from the 2026 World Cup, despite remarks from the country's sports minister suggesting participation may be impossible after recent airstrikes on Tehran.
And that's all for tonight. Thank you for watching. Do take care.